Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dawn of Drones podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldai, CEO of P3 Tech Consulting and your host. We are week 2 of Innovation Month, and we kicked it off with our month sponsor. You can see there on the screen, Iris Automation. We had John Damish, the CEO, and if you missed it, go back and watch it because all of these shows are available on demand. And but right now we're live, and so just a reminder that drop things in the chat, like say hello to us, tell us where you're from, ask your questions, give us positive encouragement. We love all of that. So today we have our special guest from Elsight. So they are an Israeli-based company. We have Beni Farkas coming to us live from Israel, actually in a strip mall on his way to run a 10K. And we have Scott Jonasz, are you in the United States right now or in Canada?
I'm actually in Canada at a small municipal airport doing some drone testing.
Okay, so this is truly a global podcast. As you can see, our guests are scattered around the world, even as we speak. So welcome, Scott. Welcome, Beni.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Great to have you guys. And look, Elsight is doing incredible things in beyond visual line of sight through your artificial intelligence connectivity solution. And so we're going to talk quite a bit about that today. But before we jump right into that, let's give a little bit of context, a little bit of background. So Beni, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got connected with Elsight in the first place.
All right. Thank you, Don. A pleasure to be here. First of all, I've been a fanboy of yours for a while, following you on social networks, LinkedIn activities, like the things that you do. As for my background, I started my career in different technical roles, spanning across several industries such as telecom, storage systems, and databases, shifting with time into account management and sales. My current engagement with Elsight is as a Senior Director of Strategic Accounts, basically focusing on our most important partnerships and collaboration.
All right, so a little bit hard to hear with the food court noise probably in the background, so I will just make sure we speak up a little louder. And oh, by the way, we've got a gentleman named James standing out there, so James, thanks for shouting out. Really appreciate you doing that. And Scott, go ahead, give us a little bit about your background as well.
I appreciate that, Don. And obviously, like Beni said, really honored to be here. Appreciate the time. So my background extends across quite a few roles, responsibilities, and industries. I guess what's relevant to our discussion today is my engagement at Elsight has been my entrepreneurial background, founding different software companies, telecommunications companies, and taking those companies to the point of more B2B, B2G, global engagement and revenue acceleration. So I've been with Elsight about 1 year now. And like you said earlier in the podcast, we are a global company. So we're all over the world engaging with different companies that are involved in UAV drones and the broadband ecosystem. So again, a pleasure to be here.
Well, fun fact, everybody out there, at AUVSI Exponential in August, we were in Atlanta. And I'm pounding the pavement. I'm walking that expo floor every single day. I mean, literally to the point where my right knee kind of blew out. But I'll never forget Beni running up to me and saying, Dawn, first of all, I didn't know Beni at the time. And all I hear is Dawn. And I turn around and it was Beni, and he's just like, LinkedIn. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, I'm from Elsight. We need to be on your podcast. So that's kind of what started our connection. And so Beni was here in the United States at the time. And you guys, you really are everywhere. I mean, someone just said that about me the other day, but clearly you both are. And such an honor to have you both on here. So let's talk about Elsight. So when we were on Clubhouse last week, I'm going to put you on the spot, Beni. We were on Clubhouse last Thursday, and I said, Elsight is an interesting name. What does it mean? And I'm going to ask again
Okay,
because you were
so
going to go back and
I
confirm.
I was expecting that. I did confirm actually the same day. I hope my sound is better now a little bit. I'm trying to speak up. I did confirm the same day. So Elsight is, like I said, El in Hebrew means God. Sight is sight, vision. So the name literally translates into God's vision. This is because in the early days, Elsight was providing a solution which was also comprising a video stream from the field. So this is where the name comes from originally. So confirmed.
All right. So God Vision, Elsight in Hebrew. You said the video was originally going from where to where?
Originally, the company was creating products that were streaming video from the field to wherever headquarters needed it, or different applications of video streaming using the same similar technology which we currently have today with our Halo.
Got it. Got it. So, you know, that's a great segue because your company really was started by two visionaries in 2009, two Israeli special forces members that had the idea, this vision, if you will, that we need to stream this more effectively. And it sounds like that Elsight really started out initially doing military applications. Is that right?
That is correct. So it's really within not only these military applications, but really any application that required critical connectivity where you cannot have anything go down. So whether it's, you know, military field force in the field that need to be, more safe or at least protected or provide information around potential threats or what have you, it's really where they started in terms of making sure that critical connectivity path was there to get the information to the people that need it as immediately as possible. So it really came from that whole critical communication and evolving into connection confidence where you don't have to worry about the connection. If you have the Elsight platform on board, you're definitively going to be able to have that connectivity. You don't have to worry about it.
So I understand that it was about 2017, like a handful of years later after the company was started, that you guys launched what you call the Sixth Sense. So can you tell us a little bit about what exactly that is?
Certainly. So I'm a Marvel guy. So if you think about Spider-Man's Sixth Sense, and in terms of being able to have a premonition or the feeling of something, that's really where it comes from. It's that sixth sense to where we're actually sniffing what connection path may be best or most appropriate. So as you're leveraging the Halo product, we're constantly looking for that best connection path. And then we're leveraging that connection path to make sure that we're delivering that the best bandwidth, the best reliability. So we're literally have the ability to swap carriers or swap operators or swap connections in real time to make sure that we maintain that level of bandwidth. So the sixth sense is that premonition, the sniffing, the sense that we need to switch networks because of a degradation issue to make sure that we swap over to the right type of connection to deliver that demand bandwidth that we need.
Okay, well, you mentioned Halo, so let's go there because obviously the Sixth Sense is kind of a component, if you will, or incorporated into your overall Halo solution. Sticking with that divine theme, right? We got God Vision, Elsight, the company, and we got the Halo. So tell us about Halo then and how it utilizes the Sixth Sense kind of sniffing mechanism for this connectivity solution.
Certainly. So the Halo platform leverages either up to six different IP connections. So you can literally go from 5G to 4G LTE. You can go to satellite. You can go to RF, Wi-Fi, etc. What it doesn't really matter, but we're taking all of those connection paths and we're bonding them together. So in the sense of, let's just talk about the United States, I could be leveraging RF, but I'm also leveraging AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, US Cellular, or some tertiary MVNO somewhere. I'm taking all their signals, bonding it together into one giant pipe and delivering that critical bandwidth that someone would need. So if it's coming in to where, let's take just like a drone real world use case to where I'm sitting at, the origination point base station, I'm getting my instructions via Wi-Fi or what have you, And then I take off and I'm leveraging the RF signal because it's the strongest signal. Once I get up to a certain level of altitude, maybe I swap over to 5G, get up a little bit higher, I go to 4G, get to some place where the connectivity isn't all that good, I swap over to satellite. And then as I start going to the destination, I go back down satellite, 4G, 5G, RF, and then I land, etc. So we have the ability to make sure that we're always leveraging those different bandwidth connections through that sixth sense to deliver the absolute connection that you need in order to maintain, C2 or detect and avoid or passing video, passing secure data back and forth. And because of that sixth sense and some of the technology that we use, we actually can swap carriers. So as you're sitting there going over, and let's say you're flying over the Appalachian Mountains, we can swap over from the main carriers and then go to like Appalachian Telecom or Blue Ridge Telecom as an MVNO, and then swap over to the main carriers, what have you, when the signal is back up and you don't have that degradation. So you literally have a platform on board that allows you to have that critical connection. You literally don't have to worry about it because we're gonna maintain that connection through the bonding.
Well, there's folks out there like looks like we got Lone Star UAV, presumably coming at us from Texas. What they're really interested in, I imagine, is why should they care, right? And I think they should care because what you're doing is enabling beyond visual line of sight operations. I mean, I guess maybe this is a little bit different, but still somewhat of a religious reference. We always call it, like the Holy Grail, right? Like we're all seeking this inevitable solution of, beyond visual line of sight. There's regulatory challenges, and some folks have said, hey, there's still technical challenges. I feel like you guys have cracked the nut here on it. And I'm going to say that because from our last conversation, my understanding is you've enabled more than 10,000 drone deliveries beyond visual line of sight in Tel Aviv and Israel alone in the last, So I'm going to go to Beni. Beni, tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Israel. You guys have an amazing, I would say, very collaborative consortium, for lack of a better term, between your government, your transportation authority, a whole bunch of folks in private industry, companies like yours. Tell us what that program is and what you've been doing in it.
All right, so yeah, absolutely. I think Israel is very advanced into allowing and accepting that this is the next thing that's going to happen. So you have to work towards it and try to enable it. So like you said, we are very involved and present in something called the National Drone Initiative in Israel, also known as NAAMA, which in Hebrew stands for air mobility in urban spaces. Basically, it's an initiative driven by Israel's Innovation Authority, along with Israel's Civil Aviation Authority, Ministry of Transport, and other major players, private and public sector, with one single purpose: creating a vibrant drone ecosystem and collaborating into developing the appropriate regulatory requirements, allowing drones to fly and deliver over people, both for public and private sectors. So this is the initiative. It's basically an 8-phase program split into quarterly shows, where every quarter there's a 2-week show. There's flies all the time during this 8 quarters, like 2 years. But there's actual concentrated events with a lot of different drone operators flying under the same in the same skies, in the same site area, delivering a lot of goods. So last month we had phase 3 in Israel, where basically all the Tel Aviv metropolitan skies was taken over by drones, delivering anything you can think about. It is toiletries, ice cream, sushi, beer, blood samples, anything you can think about was flying above people's heads and being delivered. And in those flights, our Halo basically enables the beyond visual line of sight connectivity for all the civilian participants in this initiative. There's a couple of military or homeland security type of companies participating, that they're doing their own thing, but all the civilian participants in this initiative are relying on our communications to operate beyond visual line of sight. Think about flying in a very densely populated area with high rises. RF is really not, it's simply not working. There's no RF connectivity there. The buildings are just in the way. And the only reliable means of safely communicating with the drone is our bonded LTE.
Yeah, so I mean, you just said, I think you said
A lot of
beer, sushi, and blood all in the same sentence. You're delivering, you name it, you're delivering it. And the skies in Tel Aviv were darkened with drones, delivering all of these things. That's amazing. I remember, Beni, when we were talking just earlier this week, you mentioned some of these planes, some of these aircraft you're using have maybe even a 5-foot wingspan. Or 5 feet in length or something, because some of them are delivering like 4 pizzas at a time.
Some of the drones are pretty big. Yeah, if you need to deliver a pizza tray or 4 of them, then obviously the drone has to be large enough to have room for it. Most of the deliveries could probably fit in like a 6-pack or 8 cans of beer. You know, this is more or less the size of most of the deliveries. But we've seen some larger drones as well operating and delivering larger whatever packages.
And did I hear you say that these drones are also flying in urban canyons that don't have good RF or other connectivity, and you're using potentially satellite communications, and the halo is, to use Scott's word, sniffing out the best connectivity, and that might be a satellite solution. Is that right?
But satellite is an option. It wasn't used yet in these tests, just because satellite is very expensive, it's very costly, and it's mainly used in defense type of operations and not for delivering a sushi to your house. Nobody's going to pay like I don't know, $80K to have a satellite link just to be able to deliver sushi to somebody else. So they rely on RF when RF is available, obviously, and then on LTE. Although satellite is not really needed in these cases, because you have LTE coverage anywhere you go inside Israel, right? So any place you go, you have LTE coverage. So your drone can deliver anywhere based on that.
And I'm going to go back to Scott, because I think, you know, a concern, obviously, in the United States, the FAA has, many people have, this idea of lost link. And, you know, if your system is kind of sniffing out, you know, what's available and connecting over, it sounds like autonomously, automatically, without pilot input, you know, can there be a lost link? Has there been a lost link? And if so, what's the recovery mechanism and, you know, and latency of something like that?
Oh, great question. So specifically talking about numbers in Israel, we had a 99.9% uptime with all the missions that we did. One company was leveraging a different solution, and they were getting a 20% failure rate. They swapped over to Halo, and they went back up to the 99.9% reliability. Now, as Beni alluded to, there's a lot of LTE coverage in terms of being in Tel Aviv in those urban areas. When we were flying missions, I'm sure people probably saw the bombs that were coming over from Gaza into Israel and saw all the firework videos before. A lot of those videos were shot by drones leveraging the Halo platform. So even when some of the signals may have been jammed, we were connecting to other carriers that were not necessarily within the Israeli zone, were other carriers from other countries that weren't being jammed. So we're able to, again, collect all those signals and make sure that the bandwidth is available there. Specifically getting to your question, in the United States, is that's one of the things about, you know, reliability and redundancy. So whereas things haven't been definitively decided by the FAA as to whether LTE will be primary or redundant, that's where the Halo really allows you to evolve with whatever the legislation or regulation ends up being. So for those companies that are going from visual line of sight and definitively utilizing RF and what have you, as you start to migrate towards thinking about BIVLOS or even doing visual line of sight, you can still leverage the Halo because we process the RF signal again. But if you're capturing data, let's say you're utilizing LiDAR, utilizing video to inspect a bridge or what have you, a lot of that data flow, if it's more instantaneous, allows the people to read that and be able to provide the information that people need to have in a much faster pace. So as people then start to move from going to visual line of sight and data flow or secure data flow to more beyond the visual line of sight, because we're providing all of those type of IP links or communication links into one bonded big pipe, you don't have to worry so much about the redundancy because it's already inherent within the solution. For those areas in which maybe you don't have coverage and you do need satellite, my expectation that with the intelligence of all the UAV and drone companies out there, they're not going to have the use case of delivering sushi in rural Texas where they have to utilize satellite. I would imagine for those particular use cases, the leveraging of the satellite or private LTE or putting up a particular private RF tower or whatever, those things are there, but you don't have to worry about swapping out the Halo or some other communication ecosystem within your platform. The Halo covers it all. So it really allows you not only to evolve your platform, your vertical integration, but also allows you to evolve with the regulation and certification that will happen within the US borders.
Well, it's so interesting. You're using a lot of words, but when I'm listening, what I'm hearing is resilience. And you just mentioned GPS jamming. You know, it's so interesting you mentioned that, because I literally got a message first on LinkedIn, then they followed up on email. A company whose name I won't mention was out in Indonesia doing some operations, and they'd seen some of my work on counter UAS, and the question was, you know, can counter UAS be kind of jamming up my drone operations right now? And if so, what do I do about it? Answer yes. And, you know, now I know more that I could say, you know, y'all should be talking to Elsight, because if for some reason, you know, some counter UAS technology is jamming one of those IP pipes, if you will, up, then maybe there's, you know, your solution would sniff out another. I mean, that's really huge. I mean, having worked in the United States Air Force on some of the, you know, aircraft accidents involving large UAS, oftentimes overseas on the battlefield, you know, this idea of lost link, it's kind of a frightening concept. You know, it's one thing to kind of lose it out in the middle of nowhere, right? And you can recover the bird. It's another, as you said, to be in rural Texas or even urban Texas, you know, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area delivering sushi. You know, you need that strong connection, and it sounds like you're doing that. So let's talk about the global nature of what you're doing, because obviously you're in Canada right now, Scott. I met Beni here in the United States. You know, you're doing a ton in Israel, but what else are you doing and where? Just give us a couple examples.
Well, in terms of theater, and then I'll let Beni go as well. In terms of theaters in which a lot of our partners leverage our platform, it is global. So, you know, we have things that are running in Texas. We have things that are running in South America, EMEA, Africa. I think I said Dubai, Australia. So we literally have companies that are leveraging our technology on a global basis. And the way our platform works is obviously because of different signals and bands and what have you, we're able to swap out, you know, which piggy goes on in order for the SIM cards to be there, or we leverage, you know, global eSIM or multi-MZ type of technology. So it doesn't matter where the companies want to leverage our platform. We automatically have that, you know, direct connection, plug it in, and quote unquote it goes. But we are operating in theaters on a global basis. We're completely agnostic to the operators. So we're the one things that once you plug us in, it doesn't really matter in terms of the geo theater in which you're operating in.
Well, and I'd like to ask Beni then, as a follow-on to kind of all the different drone deliveries y'all are doing in Israel. What are the use cases then you're seeing in this global theater in some of the locations Scott just mentioned, where they're leveraging Halo and your Elsight technology?
Well, I think that's a great question, because we've been talking about drone deliveries, but there are so many other use cases for drones. And Scott mentioned that we operate, for example, in places like Dubai, like the East, right? These places, our technology is leveraged to do inspection of different strategic sites like electricity, water, power lines. Even in Israel, by the way, we also do the same thing. There are drones inspecting power lines, inspecting plantations for agriculture, right? So drones are flying over plantations, finding out if there are infected zones that need to be taken care of. There's a lot of different use cases that drones are being used, and a lot of them are leveraging, obviously, our VLOS solution. Think about, I'll give you an example. It's an Israeli one, but obviously the same thing happens in other places. One of our customers is running inspections of crops, right? And the way they did it so far is they get into a car, drive in the field, have a drone fly above their head, and they have a pilot in the car just flying the drone, and they're driving along in the field with the drone. Today, they sit in their office in Tel Aviv. The drone is somewhere near the Jordanian border, and they just pilot it from there, and they inspect the crops remotely from an air-conditioned office. They don't have to go out in the field, and they stream back the video, and they figure out if anything needs to be done, obviously. So it's much more scalable. You don't have to have a pilot per drone. So obviously, it allows to scale one's business much faster and doing it obviously much more comfortably. Same thing applies for inspections, like I mentioned earlier, for different facilities like water pumps, like electricity, like maybe different government facilities that need to be secured and patrolled from the air remotely. So all these applications are valid to be done using the VLOS connectivity.
It's
So
funny, I
there's
heard sorry, go ahead, Don.
Oh, I'm sorry, Scott. I was gonna say two things. One is, for those of us with military background familiar with military operations, what you're describing, Beni, is really second nature. This idea of having a remote operations center, like for example, United States, Creech, Nevada, flying a drone in Iraq, right? Like, and you just mentioned people in Israel are flying, commercially near the Jordanian border to do agriculture. I just don't think most folks on the civilian side, the commercial drone side, can really get their brain around the fact that this is doable and is actually happening, not just on the military side, but commercially in other places of the world. And then as a follow on, this one I think is to you, Scott. We've got, before you go, again, James standing out there asking this question, which I was going to ask, but this is great. So thanks for asking it, James. Is this a firmware or is it a separate attachment to the drone? So that's the first question.
So it is a board. It is firmware, but we are providing to other partners, which you'll see announcements coming up. Like, I think I talked about on our last session is I'm going to leave it to the PR guys and the marketing guys who spent quite a bit of time putting together these releases for them to talk about the names in which we're engaging with. But we are doing it where it's completely Docker software based to be able to leverage our platform, our aggregation, our AI capabilities. So it is both a hardware and a software solution. And we've been actually pulled into the services side because if you think about the economies of scale of the data that needs to be leveraged for, some heavy data applications like video processing or what have you, or we've been pulled into the service game. So we've contracted with carriers on a global basis to be able to provide highly discounted rates for the data. And that, as that grows with more of the companies that are leveraging us, obviously the benefit to our clients, our OEM partners, becomes much greater, much broader because of that economies of scale, the amount of data that we're processing for our clients. One of the things that I wanted to touch upon, and for those, not so on the military application, but on the commercial application, is one of our partners literally talked me through the 4 Ds yesterday, and I thought it was brilliant. So I would give him a shout out on this, but he just talked in my ear like 5 minutes ago and said, it's all good, I can mention this, but don't mention him. Is the 4 Ds are essentially distance. So people are utilizing beyond the visual line of sight for things that are just too distant to be able to do, visual line of sight, or inspecting highways or inspecting, agricultural crop areas. The other one is dirty, where, you're actually going into a ship or you're going into some place that is not a place where we want to send humans in or what have you. And they're leveraging it because it's just a dirty or a semi-dangerous job that people don't want to do. So you are doing that beyond the visual line of sight. And then you have definitively dangerous, where we're talking about border patrol, perimeter control, or field safety, emergency response, or those type of things for FEMA level events or whatever it would be. And then the final one is dull. You just don't have the people that really want to do it, or they have to be up in the air a little bit longer and they're survey and they're going back to base. So some of those things are expensive to have people patrol the perimeter, and it's just dull to have them walk around. That's where people are just doing, beyond the visual line of sight, set the mission and go type of thing. So I thought that was brilliant. The 4Ds that come up are some military-esque and mostly on the commercial side.
Yeah, I've heard the 3Ds. The distance one is a new one. I think they lob that in there for beyond visual line of sight, but it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, that's what BVLOS is all about. Hey, you know what? There's two things also I want to do. One is a lot of this is about safety. It really comes down to safety at the end of the day, and you guys are providing that solution. I do want to do a quick shout out to Iris Automation, that is the sponsor of the month. They provide a machine learning kind of vision-based detect and avoid solution, and so we're really thankful for Iris for sponsoring this entire month of innovation, having folks like Beni and Scott also on who are sponsoring this particular episode. I believe we have a video maybe we can roll super quick. I know it's like only a minute.
I just want to add one more thing before we go to the video, Don. I think the question before, there was two parts of it. The other part of the question was, is there any video of drones delivering products in Tel Aviv? So just to quickly answer that, if you go to our LinkedIn page, Elsight, BVLOS, there's videos there. There's also
page after page
videos. You can find the videos there. Just to answer that question. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right, let's roll this quick clip from your website as well. Day in the life.
Here is the office newspaper. It's been used to deliver information over centuries, page after page, usually while listening to your favorite vinyl. This is the Halo device, a powerful platform that delivers reliable connectivity right when and where it's needed, a source you can trust, unlike some newspapers. Here is the office coffee machine. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Halo has been designed to integrate into unmanned platforms and any portable or stationary device. It's highly flexible and an optimal solution for an array of use cases. It will never let you down, unlike the office coffee machine. This is the office cookie jar. It's used to hold the office cookies. Several go missing every day. Powered by Elsight 6th Sense technology, Halo detects different networks in your area and delivers continuous wireless coverage, so no data ever goes missing, unlike the office cookies. This is Elsight. Here you'll find a company that drives forward technology and innovation on a global scale. And while we love having the bigger picture in mind, it never hurts to remember the simple things.
Nice. So in the time it takes to make a cup of coffee and eat a tray of cookies, you're flying BVLOS operations around critical infrastructure. Very good, very good. I love it. So very cool. All right, great discussion. And again, back to that question, check out their website for this video and other videos. Also LinkedIn, follow Elsight to see some of those drone delivery videos. So it took a while for you guys to get approvals to be able to use this technology commercially. I imagine the Israeli government found this to be a little bit sensitive, considering how fundamental it really is to not only military operations, but so many different operations when it comes to telecoms and connectivity. How long did it take to get approval to go commercial and be able to provide this technology globally as you're doing now?
Well, the approval process in terms of the ink on paper and the certification stamp and all that, it took about a year and a half to really petition the Israeli government and then be able to get those type of approvals. In the meantime, obviously, we were taking our military level application and then migrating it over to a commercial application, something that could be replicated, produced smartly, and I'll say serendipitously. We did that ahead of COVID a bit, so we didn't run into the same type of supply chain issues. So it's available product that we have on the shelf that we got lucky there in terms of that. Some people are still having supply chain issues. We don't have any of those issues based upon what we did to move from military to more of a commercialized environment. But it did take a year and a half to petition the Israeli government to go back through and saying, don't worry, you're going to maintain a certain level of distinct advantage because the Israeli government likes that. So now we've commercialized our product, which is far ahead in advance of what else we see in the market. But it did take a little while to get the approval from the Israeli government.
I imagine so. And you mentioned COVID, and if it taught us one thing about drones, is that they are the ultimate social distancer. And to be able to do beyond visual line of sight for, as you said, Scott, and your colleague there in Canada said, the 4Ds, those kind of operations. Even more importantly, that idea of connectivity with remote workforces, even more important in this current COVID environment. And at some point, hopefully, we'll actually come out of this. But let me ask you a little bit, going back to this idea of your video and LinkedIn. You guys have a ton of really interesting resources on your website, and you provide out to the public. I know you have a blog out there. For a while, your former employee, Asaf Raz, was doing a podcast. Tell us a little bit about, what you have out there and why you're doing that.
Well, a couple of data points is, number one, as a solution company, and when you're talking about telecom, we all know if you start getting down into the weeds, it can be, a little boring in that regard. Most people only care about, whether or not the sausage tastes good, not how you make the sausage. So Asaf has done a great job really humanizing the product and creating, that, connection confidence, creating more of a feeling around something that's a little bit more technical. But one of the things that we did learn, not only during the COVID phase, but as well we were migrating into commercialization of the product, is it gave us a lot more time to be able to talk with clients and partners and really understand exactly what they're looking for. And it's not something that we wanted to hold back as a competitive differentiation. No, we're all trying to move the industry forward. We're all trying to make Biblos a reality on a global basis and leverage the power and the benefits of drone utilization or UAV utilization. So we try to put out as much value as we can about what you need to do within growing your business, evolving your business from a drone side or broadband side or what have you. So we put out white papers, we put out different sort of PDF resources, presentation resources. As you said, Don, we do have the podcast that we do called Drone Source, where we bring in people to talk about exactly what they're doing to move the industry forward. Not necessarily definitively talking about their technology. We do have obvious conversations about that. We need to do that, but as part, that's what we really want to do, is present the value out into the entire industry to try to accelerate the industry toward being more of a reality on a global basis, and helping companies understand it's, we provide the connection, but there's platforms to look at, there's management to look at, there's life cycle. What happens if I'm flying a drone out there and it breaks? How do I swap that drone in accelerated fashion to keep on doing the delivery so I don't lose the mission, I don't lose the client, I don't lose profits and what have you. So we're trying to really take all of those collaborative roundtable sessions that we had during the commercialization process and try to put it out there as quickly as we can for people to absorb it and have a better understanding of how they might want to evolve their business.
Well, that's awesome. And we do have another question from the crowd out there. Are those materials copyrighted, or, for example, the video, maybe a drone delivery video that you might have on your LinkedIn, can people put that on their YouTube channel and discuss it? Sounds like free marketing to me.
Yeah, in terms of that, obviously there's some things out there to where some of our videographers, we may have some things we need to correct from them, but I haven't come across once where we've said no on leveraging those materials. But go ahead and reach out to myself or Beni on LinkedIn, or shameless plug, come out, email us at Elsight, to go to the website. I'm sure there's a way we can work it out. I haven't think of any way we've actually monetized that content, or we're looking to do that. It's really more about whether or not the videographers or we control the full copyright to some of those with some of the partners.
Got it. So let's shift gears a little bit. We're kind of rounding out our time here together. I want to ask Beni, what would you say Elsight's greatest recent achievement has been?
Well, I think that we've had quite a few achievements this year that we can talk about. Two of them would probably be a partnership which Scott was working collaboration with TD SyNex. If you want to talk about it after that, obviously that's his partnership, which allows us to really accelerate our engagement and orchestrationing, and to create awareness to our technology, to our solution. And another one is something that Scott touched it a little bit earlier. We partnership with a major player in the U.S. market, which again, unfortunately I cannot mention his name yet. We'll leave it to our PR guys. But I'm sure if you're going to follow in the next few weeks, it's going to be made public. It's a huge player in the U.S. market. I don't think there's anybody in the U.S. that doesn't know the name. And I think it's one of our greatest achievements this year as well.
All right, cool. Well, Scott, what was it was TD SyNex? Is that the partnership that Beni was just mentioning, the first one?
Yeah, so it is TD SyNex. It's Tech Data and SyNex merged. There are two multi-billion-dollar global distributors of technology products and services. They merged together. They were number 2 and number 3, and now they're obviously the global player. And we have a large partnership with TD SyNex in terms of our products and services. So that was a great win. I would again talk about NAMA in terms of being able, in a real world situation where thousands of missions, being able to definitively provide that 99.9% reliability. That's a huge thing when you have a real world test and you're able to deliver that definitive type of connection confidence. So it's not marketing fluff. We can actually say, we have a little bit wood behind the arrowhead of us saying connection confidence. We delivered it. And then I would also say some of the things that you'll see that we've done is, I've actually moved from Israel back to the United States, where we've opened up offices and logistics centers and things that we're doing in the United States. You don't do that haphazardly. So that's us being pulled into some of those broader partnerships, broader engagements. I'm here in Canada working with multiple partners in terms of doing that. So I would say not only people kind of knowing what our brand is and kind of what we're doing, but the amount of pull that we're getting partnerships to talk with partners to talk with us about collaborative efforts, or how would you do this? Having that seat at the table is not something we were at a year and a half ago, and now we definitively have a seat at the table with all these different type of conversations. And as Beni said, announcements coming out. I don't want to take away from the PR marketing guys in terms of doing that, but these are guys that are recognized names in commercial and government entities, where we're really excited about those announcements.
All right, awesome. Well, that alludes to the future, so everybody stay tuned for more. Keep an eye on Elsight, and as we close out, let's start with you, Beni. Do you have any closing comments for the group?
Well, closing comments would be, first of all, those of the listeners that are still not following us on LinkedIn, then please do that. Make sure that you follow us. You can connect with both myself and Scott on LinkedIn. And I think that the drone industry, as nascent as it is, it's very fast evolving, and as such, there's a lot of moving parts. And one of our goals, as Scott mentioned earlier, is to help drive the BVLOS market forward, allowing operators to focus on their business, on their important things, without having to worry about one of the critical elements as part of their operation, which is connectivity. That's our job. So this would be my closing comments, and we're here to talk with anybody who wants to talk about anything.
All right, well, awesome. Thank you so much. And Scott, how about you?
I would say is, if you really think about Elsight, we're in a really unique position because we are definitively agnostic. It doesn't matter what platform you're leveraging, what other vertical integrations you're doing, whatever the use case is, because we're just providing the connectivity on that to make all those things enabled and possible. We're having conversations across the board with people that may not be leveraging our technology or have the need right now to leverage our technology, but they're asking us, what platforms are the easiest to integrate with? What are some of the companies out there that you're looking at for, doing longer distance type of deliveries? Or I don't really have a commercial application. This is mostly an agricultural application. What do you think? We love having those conversations. It's not always about you buying a Halo. It's really about, let's have those broad conversations. So we literally are open to talk to everyone. We'd love to learn from you guys. So that my closing comment would be, it's not all about us selling a halo. Obviously we're looking to do that. We're a commercial operation, but it's also about having those conversations. And if you have questions about platforms or other vertical integrations, we're happy to tell you what we know.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. And you and Elsight are definitely making beyond visual line of sight happen. Thank you so much for being here today. And that's a great segue, because this BVLOS theme is obviously something that's going to be infused throughout this Innovation Month. In fact, tomorrow on Clubhouse at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have a representative from Black Swift Technologies, Dr. Statura. I mean, when you think about BVLOS and those use cases you were talking about, let's talk about extreme BVLOS. I'm talking into hurricanes, into tornadoes, into volcanoes. And Dr. Jack Elston from Black Swift, a Boulder-based company, is going to be on this podcast next Wednesday. So lots of Black Swift in the next week. Looking forward to hearing some about their extreme beyond visual line of sight operations. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for dialing in. Thank you, Beni. Thank you, Scott. It was a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don.